All right. Hey, folks. So today we're going to do another chat on mental health. Now, as I've gotten older, I've become more and more aware and I protect more and more my mental health. And what we're going to talk about today is we're going to be talking about protecting your mental health from people in your life, people you have to deal with, or people who are part of your life. It could be friends, family, relations, work colleagues, and how to deal with people who begin to become problematic, who may not have been previously. So I want to start off by discussing some scenarios where this has happened, and then also the feelings which arise from that, and then finally how to deal with these people. So firstly, I think with regards to the scenarios where I've seen this happen, because I want you guys to be able to relate to this, I think we can split them up into two categories. One is people you have to keep in your life. So regardless of what happens, you have to keep these people in your life. And that's probably more problematic. And the other side is people you don't have to keep in your life. Now, oftentimes it's simpler, but that is more painful because usually those people are related to you, or they're your family, friends, even relations. So it's sort of a double-edged sword. People who you have to continue keeping in your life tend to be ones you don't really care about that much because they are there by circumstance. The people who you can cut off, they are there by choice. And so it's more painful when you have to cut them off. So if we just explore both. Firstly, I'll give you an example of somebody who has been in my life previously and I've cut them off. And that was a friend of mine. So I have a friend of mine who I've known for about 5 or 6 years, and I've known him since he was 17. So since he was quite young, and as young people are, they tend to be quite sort of self-conscious and all that kind of stuff. I know him from the gym, basically. And so I've always given him a lot of confidence, and he's always enjoyed that because, I'm an older guy at the gym. He feels good when he speaks to me because I give him a lot of confidence, I give him a lot of praise, and I give him a lot of information about his training. He also, his academia as well, helped him with his studies, all that kind of stuff. So anyway, recently his personality as he's grown up, so he's now a young man, he's sort of 21, 22, his personality has somewhat taken a turn. And I think he's going through a phase where he's just starting to find himself, he's starting to push boundaries, and he's starting to come across as quite rude, and his energy is quite sort of draining. And this has been going on for a while, so this is not something which is quick because I've known him for years. But more and more, whenever I interact with him, it's just more and more negative, and he's more and more pointed with things he says, things which could be banter or just a little bit rude and a bit odd. And thinking, I don't really want this guy in my life anymore. So I've made a decision to cut him off. Now, I know that Steve Shaw from Massive Iron, he's also expressed similar things, that people who he's helped with business and various other things like training, all of a sudden they'll just up and leave without saying anything. And that's the danger of being somebody who is helpful. That's what people like me and Steve, people like me and Steve do. We aim to help. That's what I've done my entire life, is try and help people by giving them information, teaching them whatever. But ultimately, when you do that, you get burnt. And I think Steve understands this. He's been in these scenarios before, and it's always quite painful when it happens because emotionally it's quite damaging. Because if you are a person who likes to help and you've invested time into these people, it can be quite hurtful. So anyway, those are scenarios where you have a choice to remove people from your life. Now, there are other scenarios where you potentially don't have an option to remove people from your life, like their work colleagues, or people you work with. Like, I'll give you an example from when I was a school teacher. Now, as a school teacher, ground level teachers tend to be very passionate people, by and large, is my experience. Now, inevitably, you're going to get some students who just aren't ready for school at that age. They're not really built for education at that age. Perhaps they're late bloomers, whatever. And as a result, they'll maybe some problems at home or whatever, they'll tend to play up in class. Now, if they consistently do that, it becomes a problem for you. Okay. And there's only so much you can do as a ground level teacher. You can't fix their lives. It doesn't happen. So they end up just playing up and becoming a problem for you. Now, if that consistently happens, what tends to occur with most teachers is they'll remain professional, but you become sort of emotionally distant. You become very sort of minimalistically professional. So you're less emotionally invested in the future of those children. Whereas with students who you sort of get along with, who reciprocate, who are very good at doing all the things they need to do to be for their education, who show that they're willing to learn and do all the things necessary, great. And bear in mind, this is more about effort. This is not about results, because results vary, but this is more about, is the kid there willing to learn? So that's when you sort of put you're more emotionally invested. Whereas with the other types of students who turn up to the class and they're not really bothered, you tend to become very distant. Everything becomes very robotic. Okay, you haven't done your homework again. Great. This will go to your parents, blah, 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 all that stuff. So a couple of scenarios where you've essentially got people in your life who, one, you can either remove, or two, you can't. Now, if you've put effort into these relationships, what tends to happen once these relationships turn is there's a feeling of resentment which starts to build, because you resent the fact that you've tried to help this person in the past. You have helped them in the past. And all of a sudden they've sort of turned on you, for no reason. Just something's going on in their life. Perhaps in the case of the child, he's got some problems at home, so he's acting up. Perhaps in the case of your friend, he's grown up and it just turns out he's a bit of a douchebag when he's grown up. Who knows, Perhaps somebody else, he's decided he has a better business opportunity elsewhere, so off he's gone. So there builds a sense of resentment, because as is, my personality, I like to help people, but you get burnt. And so there's a feeling of resentment. Now, how to deal with that feeling of resentment is the second point of what I want to cover. So first point was scenarios. Now, how to deal with resentment. I think the first thing you have to realize when it comes down to dealing with resentment is, and this is to sort of protect your own mental space, it's not about you. Like, what they did was more about them. It's more a reflection on them. What you've tried to do is you've tried to help them. You've done what makes you a good person, what makes you a lovable person, what makes you a helpful person, which is try to help the person. If they've taken that help and they've abused it and made you feel bad about it, or used you, then that really says more about them. It's hard to remember that at the time when it's happening, but ultimately it's true and you have to remember it. I think resentment is normal, but you have to be able to see past that. It's positive that you helped. The negative was on them. They spurned the chance. So now let's talk a bit about how to deal with these scenarios. Okay, so let's firstly talk about how to deal with people. Well, actually, before we even talk about how to deal with people who are either in your life, you have to keep in your life, or ones you don't, let's talk about setting boundaries. Now, you often hear this, like with somebody who you disagree with or whatever, or who is toxic, set a boundary. I want to just make a point here. You're not obligated to set a boundary. Okay, you're not. There is no obligation to set a boundary. If that person has done something which consistently takes away from your mental energy, makes you feel resentful, you've helped them and they've turned on you, whatever it is, it's your choice to set a boundary. If they've already done so much to you to make you feel this way and upset the balance that you have, they've already made a choice. It's your choice to set a boundary or not. You don't have to do that. You can just cut them out of your life. The question is, do you want to salvage the relationship? Do you want to make something up? If it's a friend, an old friend, all of a sudden he's turned. He's not what you thought. He's treating you right badly. You just don't feel good from that interaction. You're not obliged to salvage a relationship, particularly one where you can just eliminate that person from your life. You're not obliged. And I think that's normal. Okay. So if somebody begs you for a reason for cutting them out of your life, you don't need to provide them one. And you can be strong enough to say that. You don't need to. You can just, they're gone. Okay. So you have a choice whether to set a boundary or not. Now, the next thing is distancing. Okay. So assuming we're going with that example where you are just cutting this person off out of your life, distancing means getting rid of them on any kind of form of contact, which is quite simple. Okay, social media, phone, everything, they're gone. Now, in terms of distancing when you have to continue working with this person, I would say with regards to this, it's a case of setting boundaries, for yourself as much as it is for them. So I think you've got to be almost sort of robotically unemotional with the way you deal with them. So any interaction with people who you have decided, look, you are now on my shit list, even though you're still in my life and I have to deal with you, become robotically unemotional. Do not allow your emotion to be a part of your interaction with them. I would also recommend, if it's a work person, keeping a log of everything that's going on. an unemotional day-by-day log just to document everything that's happened with this, assuming they continue the behavior that they are continuing, so that you have a log of events building up to satisfy any potential action which you might have further down the line. Okay. Now, different workplaces have different sort of scenarios and ways of dealing with antisocial behavior at work. So I won't go into that, but I think keeping a log is certainly a very positive step if you find yourself in this situation. Now, if we go back to the people who you can sort of, who you might want to keep in your life, let's assume now you have a friend, or, whatever, family relation, and you want to keep them in your life. You want to salvage the relationship. So you've made the choice, you want to salvage the relationship. This is when you would set a boundary. And I think it's okay to say to someone, look, that thing you said the other day made me feel like shit. Don't do it again. Simple. I don't think there needs to be a discussion. I think all too often there's a discussion. And what might happen is, well, you've said one thing, I've said another. I understand your point and blah, 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 but I think you should bear this in mind. And it starts to get very clouded. End of the day, if something has caused you to feel a certain way and you're sure about that, if it's been toxic, negative kind of behavior, it's okay to say to someone, look, you need to stop that. Now, at that stage, whatever it is, whatever the behavior is, and again, it might be something which somebody else thinks is perfectly fine. There are jokes which are just not for certain people, and that's okay. People get slapped this label as being a snowflake, and okay, maybe for some people they are. But if it's something which is causing you mental stress, yes, you could say toughen up, of course, but it's not always the case, because quite frankly, we are all different people. That is what makes the world go round. We're all different. So what is a boundary for one person is maybe not a boundary for another. But in this situation we're talking about, that shouldn't matter because it's still a boundary for you. So you can say to them, look, that what you didn't like it. You need to not do that again. Now, at that stage, it's their choice to either take that on board or not. Now, if they don't take that on board and they continue to do what they were doing, then flips around to point one, which is you don't have to set them a boundary. You can then just chop them out of your life forever, and that's done. Okay, so yeah, I think hopefully, I've sort of covered scenarios, which is scenarios based on either people who you have to keep in your life or people you don't. Some which have happened to me, some which are potential scenarios. The feelings which arise out of the scenarios from trying to help somebody who then later turns on you. And finally, just how to deal with these people. So dealing with them either in a scenario where you have to keep them in your life or dealing with it ultimately in a scenario where you can remove them from your life for good. And I think it's the one way you can remove them from your life is probably simpler because you can or don't have to set them a boundary and then you can just eliminate them. When you have to work with them, I think it's wise to keep a written log, become robotically unemotional with how you deal with them, keep a log of everything that's been said, assuming they continue that behavior. It's good to have a written log of events and leading into future action later down the line. But the older I get, guys, I firmly believe that you have to protect your mental space. And on the internet, it's fine, like whatever. I mean, if somebody says, since I've started this YouTube channel, there's been a lot of like odd comments here and there. But the overwhelming comments have been very positive because otherwise, why would people continue to tune in? So I try and focus on those, but you're always going to have people on the internet who want to just shit talk for the sake of it. That's fine. That's not something which I feel is even really worth addressing because it's just stuff that happens, right? But this stuff is more about people who are in your life, who have been in your life, who have perhaps even been a positive part of your life, but then have switched on you, and how to deal with those people, or maybe in a situation like work where you just can't eliminate them and you have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis, how to deal with that. Hopefully that's sort of given you guys a bit of experience in terms of how I deal with things when it comes to these people who are in your life and you have become problematic. And again, I'm not suggesting this is just a way of eliminating anybody toxic in your life. I mean, there is healthy debate is a different thing altogether. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual toxicity. So I'm going to call it there. Hopefully that was useful to someone anyway, with regards to how to deal with things. If nothing else, just to give you a support for perhaps decisions you've made in the past. Anyway, I will call it there now. Hopefully you guys are doing great and I'll speak to you next time.